Hey guys, I'm back with another writing lesson, and I want to talk about stretching out your stories. Um, we talked about it in Small Moment Writing at the beginning of the year, and we're going to use the same thing now. We're going to talk about stretching out our stories, but the only difference is you're not going to be writing about yourself. Like in Small Moment Stories, you're going to be writing about a character. So you want to make sure that you use this chart, ways to bring your story to life, make them move, make them talk, tell it in small little steps, zoom in, make them think and feel. All of those things add details to your writing, and they stretch out your story. You need to stretch out the beginning, stretch out the trouble, stretch out the getting out of trouble. So I thought we'd write a story together. If I was with you, we would make up one together. But I was making up a character named Charles, and he's a 7-year-old boy like some of you. And he loves riding his skateboard in front of his house. He loves drinking soda, and he loves playing at his friend Joe's house. So what trouble could Charles get into? Well, maybe since he likes riding his skateboard, maybe he wants to get a fancy skateboard, but he can't afford it. Maybe that's his trouble. Maybe he leaves his block in front of his house and he gets lost and can't find his way back. Maybe he falls off his skateboard because he was showing off to his friend Joe and he was drinking soda and he gets hurt. I think I'm going to choose the last one, that he was showing off and he falls off his skateboard. So then I'm going to think about planning it across my fingers. Well, maybe he was skateboarding with Joe at Joe's house, in front of Joe's house. And then on the second page, he was showing off to Joe. And then on the third page, he falls down. And then maybe on the next page, Joe has to go get help. And then the last page, they come back and take Charles home. Okay? So we want to stretch out our details. What exactly was Charles doing? How was he feeling? What did he say? Okay? So after I tell it across my fingers, I sketched it out. So I have Joe and Charles riding their skateboards. They're at Joe's house. And then Charles is showing off to Joe. And then Charles falls down because he doesn't see the rock there in front of him. And then Joe has to run and get help for Charles. And then Joe brings Charles's dad back to help. Okay? So now I told it across my fingers. I sketched it out. And now I'm going to write some of the words. So on the first page, I'm going to put up here on the board, and I'm going to say, one morning, Charles was skateboarding with his friend Joe. And maybe Charles says, "Look how fast I am going." Said Charles. "I can catch you." Think about what you would say if you were with your friend. Joe replied. Replied is just another word for said, but it makes your story more interesting. Okay? Let me read what we have so far. Look, I filled up almost all the lines. One morning, Charles was skateboarding with his friend Joe. "Look how fast I'm going," said Charles. "I can catch you," Joe replied. And look how I put the quotation marks right around what they were saying, just around what came out of their mouth. So then on page 2, I'm going to take down page 1. And on page 2, I'm going to say, they were chasing each other. Chasing each other and showing off. Look at me, Charles said, drinking his soda. So he was distracted by drinking his soda. And I have him up in the picture saying, look at me, with a speech bubble. He didn't see the big rock on the sidewalk. There's one of my compound words, sidewalk. Watch out, screamed Joe. You see how I have them labeled up here, Joe and Charles, so the reader can keep track of them. And I have Joe up here saying, watch out. So let's read what we have so far. Page 1 says, one morning, Charles was skateboarding with his friend Joe. Look how fast I'm going, said Charles. I can catch you, Joe replied. Page 2 said they were chasing each other and showing off. Look at me, Charles said, drinking his soda. He didn't see the big rock on the sidewalk. Watch out, screamed Joe. And I have Charles up here drinking his soda. And Joe is looking scared because he knows that Charles is going to run into the rock. All right, then on page 3, what can I say? I'm going to say Charles. Let me see if I can use a strong action word. Charles, instead of fell, tumbled over the rock. The soda went flying. Charles fell and his knee was, I want to write a strong word, gushing, ing with blood, period. And I have his knee with the blood, and maybe even the soda can went over here. And Joe is looking surprised, and Charles is looking sad. Okay? Now, what am I going to do now? What did Charles do, and what did Joe do? How are they going to get out of this trouble? Let's see. On page 4, I think Joe is going to have to go get help. That's what I said when I planned out the story. I think he's going to go maybe to Charles's house to get his dad. Joe goes to get help for Charles. Joe ran all the way back to Charles's house. He looked for Charles's dad. Help! Help! Joe said. Charles is hurt. Let's see what we have here. Joe goes to get help for Charles. Joe ran all the way back to Charles's house. He looked for Charles's dad. Help, help, Joe said. Charles is hurt. And then on the last page, what is the dad going to do? We'll probably come back with Joe to help Charles, right? So on the last page, I might say, Charles's dad Now let me start over. How about Joe and Charles's dad ran down the street with towels and Band-Aids because Charles was bleeding. The dad said, "It's okay, Charles." Dad helped Charles and Joe got the skateboards. Then they walked home. Wonder what will be a good last line. I wonder what Charles would say. Maybe, "I'll never do this again," right? I'll never maybe show off again, Charles said. Oh, I ran out of lines on this paper. So let's read the last page. It says, Joe and Charles's dad ran down the street with towels and Band-Aids. The dad said, "It's okay, Charles." Dad helped Charles. And, oh, I've missed a word. See, that's why you reread. Dad helped Charles get up. And Joe got the skateboards. Then they walked home. "I'll never show off again," Charles said. Now, you see how I stretched out the story with moving and talking and thinking and feeling? I could add a little more feeling in the words and thinking. Maybe I'll go back and fix that up. But I stretched out the trouble and I stretched out the solution. And now I'm writing a 5-page story, okay? So the last thing I want to do is just read the whole story, and then you're going to go and try this. One morning, Charles was skateboarding with his friend Joe. "Look how fast I'm going," said Charles. "I can catch you," Joe replied. They were chasing each other and showing off. "Look at me," Charles said, drinking a soda. He didn't see the big rock on the sidewalk. "Watch out!" screamed Joe. Charles tumbled over the rock. The soda went flying. Charles fell and his knee was gushing with blood. Joe goes to get help for Charles. Joe ran all the way back to Charles's house. He looked for Charles's dad. "Help! Help!" Joe said. "Charles is hurt." Joe and Charles's dad ran down the street with towels and Band-Aids. The dad said, "It's okay, Charles." Dad helped Charles get up, and Joe got the skateboards, and then they walked home. "I'll never show off again," Charles said. Okay? Now, remember to stretch out the details in the trouble part and the getting out of trouble part, and make sure you use your chart of ways to bring your story to life. I can't wait to read your stories, and I'll see you next